quite round the church.'
'I don't see much in that,' said John, drawing a long breath, and looking round him like a man who felt relieved.
'Perhaps not,' returned his friend, 'but that's not all.'
'What more do you mean to say, sir, is to come?' asked John, pausing in the act of wiping his face upon his apron. 'What are you a going to tell us of next?'
'What I saw.'
'Saw!' echoed all three, bending forward.
'When I opened the church door to come out,' said the little man, with an expression of face which bore ample testimony to the sincerity of his conviction, 'when I opened the church door to come out, which I did suddenly, for I wanted to get it shut again before another gust of wind came up, there crossed me, so close that by stretching out my finger I could have touched it, something in the likeness of a man. It was bareheaded to the storm. It turned its face without stopping, and fixed its eyes on mine. It was a ghost, a spirit.'
'Whose?' they all cried together. In the excess of his emotion, for he fell back trembling in his chair, and waved his hand as if entreating them to question him no further, his answer was lost on all but old John Willet, who happened to be seated close beside him. 'Who?' cried Parkes and Tom Cobb, looking eagerly by turns at Solomon Daisy and Mr Willet. 'Who was it?' 'Gentlemen,' said Mr Willet, after a long pause, 'you needn't ask. The likeness of a murdered man. This is the 19th of March.' A profound silence ensued. 'If you'll take my advice,' said John, 'we had better, one and all, keep this a secret. Such tales would not be liked at the Warren. Let us keep it to ourselves, for the present time at all events, or we may get into trouble, and Solomon may lose his place. Whether it was really as he says, or whether it wasn't, is no matter. Right or wrong, nobody would believe him. As to the probabilities, I don't myself think,' said Mr Willet, eyeing the corners of the room in a manner which showed that, like some other philosophers, he was not quite easy in his theory, 'that a ghost as had been a man of sense in his lifetime would be out a walking in such weather. I only know that I wouldn't, if I was one.' But this heretical doctrine was strongly opposed by the other three, who quoted a great many precedents to show that bad weather was the very time for such appearances, and Mr Parkes, who had had a ghost in his family by the mother's side, argued the matter with so much ingenuity and force of illustration that John was only saved from having to retract his opinion by the opportune appearance of supper, to which they applied themselves with a dreadful relish. Even Solomon Daisy himself, by dint of the elevating influences of fire, lights, brandy, and good company, so far recovered as to handle his knife and fork in a highly creditable manner, and to display a capacity both of eating and drinking such as banished all fear of his having sustained any lasting injury from his fright. Supper done, they crowded round the fire again, and, as is common on such occasions, propounded all manner of leading questions calculated to surround a story with new horrors and surprises. But Solomon Daisy, notwithstanding these temptations, adhered so steadily to his original account, and repeated it so often, with such slight variations, and with such solemn asseverations of its truth and reality, that his hearers were, with good reason, more astonished than at first. As he took John Willet's view of the matter in regard to the propriety of not bruiting the tale abroad, unless the spirit should appear to him again, in which case it would be necessary to take immediate counsel with the clergyman, it was solemnly resolved that it should be hushed up and kept quiet. And as most men like to have a secret to tell which may exalt their own importance, they arrived at this conclusion with perfect unanimity.
As it was by this time growing late, and was long past their usual hour of separating, the cronies parted for the night. Solomon Daisy, with a fresh candle in his lantern, repaired homewards under the escort of long Phil Parkes and Mr Cobb, who were rather more nervous than himself. Mr Willet, after seeing them to the door, returned to collect his thoughts with the assistance of the boiler, and to listen to the storm of wind and rain, which had not yet abated one jot of its fury. Chapter 34.